All right. Well, up next we have two people from Scythe, and you might be hearing it and then spelling it differently in your head. So I'm going to spell it out: SCYTHE. And I've kind of been, I've heard of them before. The understanding that I have is that they've built out a platform that basically simulates cyber attacks, which is a super helpful thing for organizations, obviously, because they are able to simulate cyber attacks, check how their blue team kind of reacts and things like that. But I'm not fully au fait with all of the details, so I'm definitely going to be hoping that they explain all that. But the two people that are coming on are the CTO and the founder of Scythe. So the founder is Bryson. He is amazing. And then the CTO is Jorge Orchiles. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But
I think it's actually George.
It's George, is it? Oh, yeah. No. Okay.
I can vouch the tool is amazing. Like, genuinely, it's really, really good.
Yeah, it looks really cool, just going off what I've seen. So the talk name is, it's not a vulnerability, it's a feature. And I'm just going to read the abstract flat out because it's a really good abstract. How many times have you heard, it's not a vulnerability, it's a feature, after finding some functionality that you are sure can be used maliciously? It happens quite frequently. There is an entire project called Living Off the Land Binaries and Scripts, LOLBAS. And actually, that's a really, really cool repository. You should check it out. That features Microsoft signed binaries and scripts that allow attackers to leverage the built-in features for their own good. This happens a lot, and it's why we want to talk about how the offensive security industry has evolved and matured from CVEs to TTPs. While finding bugs and vulnerabilities pays, how can one benefit from when it is a feature? By creating, sharing, and selling TTPs, we can all benefit from the work that was already done but vendors don't want to pay for. So this is going to be super helpful. Just going off the thing, it's going to be super helpful for blue teams. It's going to be super helpful for red teamers who are doing kind of internal networks and stuff like that. If you can basically hack networks without using any exploits or vulnerabilities, but you're just using Microsoft signed binaries and you're literally using them how they are intended to get domain admin or whatever you're trying to do, then you're going to do a whole lot better, and you're going to spring off a whole lot less alerts to the blue team. So definitely a cool skill. But yeah, Scythe are doing a lot of work in that space, so I'm super excited to see what they talk about.
All right.
I think that means we're live, George.
I think we're live.
It's not that you're live, it's a feature.
Is there anybody out there? All right. Well, how are you doing? Welcome back from your camping trip.
Yeah, I took a day off, unplugged, dropped all electronics, went off the grid. I highly recommend it.
Nice.
So can you see the slides?
I can. I thought I was sharing.
Oh, you're sharing?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll stop sharing then. All you, man.
Oh, there we go. All right, cool. Yeah, it'll just be easier because I have the live demo. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. And thank you to everyone at Bug Crowd and all the organizers and the community. Awesome event. I had the pleasure of catching a few of the talks. This last panel was great. Also, the hardware hacking stuff was pretty cool. So, been in security for some time, and actually had the pleasure of building a bug bounty program at a large financial organization that at first did not think that this was a good idea. So we did build it out with Bug Crowd. Happy that finally got there, and like large financials, it took way longer than would be expected, but it's up. So I have a lot of experience on that side, and really how we've gotten to this part is that I spent a lot of time finding vulnerabilities and reporting those vulnerabilities to vendors, and a lot of the times we would hear, "Oh, that's not a bug, it's a feature." And working at financial, we didn't really get paid for any of it, but it was still annoying to hear that it's not a vulnerability, it's a feature. We're not fixing that. And this is kind of where the talk came from. So just quick intro on that. I am Jorge Orchiez, and thank you for pronouncing the name right. It's always tough, but that's me. We're both on Twitter. You can see it down there at Jorge Orchiez and at Bryson Bort. I'm the Chief Technology Officer here at Scythe, and been here 3 months now. Before that was at Citi, as I mentioned, built out a number of things there, including the red team and some of the other functions. As far as giving back to the community, co-creator with Bryson and Adam of the C2 matrix, the command and control matrix. There's 54 command and controls there now, so definitely check that out. Most of them are free and you can play with them. Also, we published a Purple Team exercise framework a couple weeks ago, and we have some cool news coming about that, but pretty much how to run Purple Team engagements, which are more efficient than just doing a yearly red team. Really gets to operationalizing things. I teach for SANS, have a 2-day red team course. I am part of the CVSS working group. We did version 3 and 3.1. I'm no longer a voting member there because I left my previous employer, but we're working on something else that's pretty cool. It's called the exploitability predictability scoring system, where we're trying to predict what vulnerabilities are going to be exploited as a prioritization thing. So still doing fun stuff there, and we're in some other stuff, other frameworks, fellow of ISSA and NSI. And that is Bryson.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't recognize me, this is what I looked like before I started to try out for the part of the late, great Robin Williams in Jumanji. But I founded Grim 8 years ago. Grim is a consultancy, aka just a best team of hackers doing a bunch of hacking things. I co-founded the nonprofit, the ICS Village, so we do critical infrastructure education and awareness. I am a senior fellow at the R Street and National Security Institute in national security and cybersecurity. And I founded Scythe, which was actually an idea that we came across while we were contracted by a large client at Grim. And most of you probably know me from all of my unicorn shenanigans. All right, so what I didn't cover in my background there is I used to be an Army officer. And as an Army officer, everything has to be really simple for me. And so whenever I think of the world, I split it up into, whoa, hey.
My bad.
What's going on there, George?
Sorry, Alt-Tab doesn't work too well, so there you go.
The world is split into three people, or 3 kinds of people, or 3 phases. Red, gray, blue. Red are the attackers. In this case, they're the bad people, but they can also be the good hackers. Usually when I give this, I'm talking to enterprises. Gray is the internet. This is the whole intermediary of how do I get from where I am to where you are and what I want. And then blue, that's us. That's the good people. These are the folks that are the white hats and we're trying to defend. Likewise, I'm going to split down. You've heard of MITRE ATT&CK and you've heard of Lockheed's kill chain, and who knows, just like there are 54 C2 frameworks that we've documented in the C2 matrix, at some point there will probably be 54 different ways that we're going to describe the attack path. Fundamentally, I think it's very simple. Recon, I'm gathering intelligence to target. Access, I gain access to your enterprise. And then post-access, what happens after I get in? Okay. Now, here has been what you've been doing with bug bounties and hunting. We're primarily looking at the access question. This looks at system hardening. This looks at perimeter defense. This is all a question of how do I make something harder to get into? And there are 2 axes into that. Tech, vulnerabilities, bugs, people. And this is the often overlooked part, is the fact that people are the, I call it the infinite calculus of people. All of those variables and all of those different days, and the fact that Sue did this and Bob did that leads to that compromise. And that is, I think, an infinite space. There are an infinite number of ways to gain access between either tech or people, or sometimes a mixture of both.
Yeah, and so, you know, getting in is obviously important, right? And that's why bug bounties have become so widely used, right? And it's great. It's an awesome ecosystem. But as we look at things, right, and you know, MITRE obviously is the one that has the common vulnerability exposure, CVEs, but then they also have MITRE ATT&CK, and obviously we have the mandatory slide that you have to have in every single presentation.
Aren't we legally required to have this slide?
Yeah, we are sued every time we do a talk and don't show this slide. So instead of just, you know, showing the slide, I actually did a search. There's a total of 184 techniques. This is as of the July update, which added sub-techniques, of course. So I'm not covering sub-techniques. I'm covering the techniques, and there's 184 of them. And if you just use Google and do a control find there and look for exploits, there's only 6 of these 184 that cover exploitation, and only 1 under initial access, right? The exploiting of public-facing applications. There's some other exploits, right, for client execution. That's your client-side vulnerabilities. And then you have some exploitation for privilege escalation, defense evasion, credential access, and remote services, which are all important, right? But what about all this other stuff, right? So if you're in the bug bounty space, you're kind of limited to this initial access type vulnerabilities. And those are great, especially because you get paid. That's awesome. You find those vulnerabilities, you report it to the vendor fixes it. You are improving security for everyone because now everyone has that patch, and it feels awesome, right? But if we heard what Bryson said, we can all agree that this is not going to change anytime soon. There's going to be many ways of you to get in. There's going to be many ways of finding these vulnerabilities. You're going to find a lot of them, obviously, as you all know, right? But what happens after that, right? And if we look at MITRE, there's initial access is one of the tactics out of a number of tactics, and it only really covers 9 techniques. There's 184 total techniques, and that, again, not including sub-techniques. So what happens after the fact, right? And that's where we see that there is more of a bound of what you can do. And here's where you're going to find all of those features, right? Because if you're not finding a vulnerability that's exploitable, or these 9 that are 6 that are there, then they're features, right? Like bits jobs, which is under defense evasion. That is a feature of the Windows operating system, right? And there's a whole bunch more. So this kind of like progresses the discussion of what a lot of us do, which was find vulnerabilities and kind of prioritize those vulnerabilities and just make sure we patch them, to the fact that we know at some point someone bad is going to have an exploit, or someone's going to get phished and they're going to get inside the network. So what do we do then? And I think that's kind of where we're going with this philosophy and as an industry as a whole.
So what first challenge from this presentation? MITRE ATT&CK is not a complete list. It is the most exhaustive encyclopedia that we have to catalog a common vernacular for us to talk to, but particularly with so many wonderful hackers out there participating in bug crowds, bug bounty programs, you have a lot of opportunities to find additional techniques that have not been discovered before and documented. And so that is what I would say the first challenge is. I think it's really cool to see all of the folks that are going out there and finding bounties, improving defenses, and making money to do it. Personal challenge here. I am impressed for anybody that also can add to this compendium of knowledge that we all use. So post access, this is our world. Bug bounty is around the access problem, but then once you gain access, once you cross, and I deliberately chose a red line because of my national security background, once you cross that red line in, the first question every attacker has, this part's animated, you're going to have to slowly click, is where am I? Attackers don't always get to choose where they start. This is I think one of those things where everybody sort of has this view of complex operators and like, oh, I got exactly where I began. No, most of the time it's you get a call back and you're like, that's the computer from that target I've been working on for 2 years. If you are doing the real thing, or if you're a red team operator, it's probably a little bit more narrowed in. And so you're like, okay, where am I? Based on where I am, where do I want to go? So you start trying to move laterally. You start trying to figure out where I can go. Oh, George, you knew I was going to show Elon Musk smoking pot again.
Of course, this is a wonderful meme.
This represents the disgruntled employee who's too smart. You don't appreciate me enough. I can't do his accent, so I don't try.
That's got to be the worst malicious insider you can ever have, is Elon Musk.
And then you try to pivot from that. Yeah, occasionally you're going to hit a dead end. And then you try to pivot from that. Oh, well, looks like we found somebody else that's also operating in here, which, by the way, does happen. And all of this is eventually to get to what's valuable, right? So where you start is an unknown, but the point of all of this is we're looking for business context. There are what I call the CJA, the crown jewel assets, the most valuable parts of a business. I want to get to those elements. That might be customer information, that might be financial information, that might be services, that might be passwords, whatever that is. There are varying values of assets and employees, and I have to figure out, once I get access, how do I get to them?
And that is really the focus, right? When we do offensive work, right? It's always about bringing business value. So, finding those vulnerabilities, obviously that's important. Getting them patched is really where the business value is, right? The business value isn't finding the vulnerability per se, but actually remediating it and stopping what could possibly happen next.
And so there's two axes in this post-access world. Communications. I have to be able to talk over the wires that are there to get to what I want. I need to do that internally. I need to do that externally because I have to drive the control of the implant campaign. And then capabilities. My software, my malware, my implant, my payload needs to be able to do certain things. Maybe I need to, for example, first question, where am I? Let's look locally. Let's be active or passive with reconning the network to understand what's around me. Start mapping out that network. Then, how do I get to those places? Do I need to masquerade? Do I need to steal credentials? What other applications are running? What are the things that I need to do to be able to leapfrog to where I want to get? And so you're going to do that across these two axes. I need to be able to talk, and then I'm going to have certain abilities to accomplish certain things. Now, this is tying it back into what's called the cyber defense matrix, which it was created by Sunil Yu. And I want to say he debuted that at RSA in 2017. And he broke the way to look at everything into 5 categories. The 3 that are relevant to us is that most bug bounties are primarily looking at protection. How do I keep access out? How do I make this system as impenetrable as I can? Because as we all know, and this is where the money's made, nothing is unhackable. But the post-access world actually is 3 levels. Not only do I have to look at protection in depth, because each one of those systems needs to be protected. And while we all know that the perimeter defense concept is invalid, you still find a lot of hard walls with a lot of easy insides once you get inside, because users are trusted. And all I have to do is look like a user as an attacker. But then the primary 2 components that are new are the detection and the response. So the one place an attacker can't hide is on the wire. On the wire, I have to go to ones and zeros like everybody else. I can't beat the laws of physics. I have to use your communication protocols because otherwise I stick out like a sore thumb. Any junior SOC analyst will be able to find me. So I put on the sheep's cloak, the sheep's clothing, and I hide. but I can't be invisible. On a host, I can be invisible. On a host, I know where you're looking for me and what you're looking for. That's just a part of my test matrix before I deploy my malware. So part of this is how do we refine those detections? Because if you're thinking about it from a SOC analyst perspective, they've got all of these great bug bounty programs from BugCrowd that's keeping as much out as possible. But when it gets in, how do I make sure that I'm looking at the minimal amount of traffic so that I can quickly identify anomalous behavior? And then now we're measuring response. What's the ability of the tools and that staff to be able to find that behavior as quickly as possible?
Yeah, and that's, the communication is so important, because if you look at it from an adversary perspective, if you don't have the communication channel, and that's kind of the focus of the command and control matrix, right? The C2 matrix, is you have to write a worm, and a worm is going to act based on whatever it finds. And yes, you can automate all of that. We're actually pretty good at doing some of that stuff, but that communication back really, really is important. Like, very rarely will you go in blind and try to move laterally and do all this work without knowing. And of course, we've seen many worms, what has happened with them, right? And obviously Stuxnet is probably the one that comes to mind first, as it was a worm. It had to be a worm because it was an air gap network, but eventually that got out. And it just really goes to show the importance of communication for your malware. So one of the things we want to cover is LOBAS, right? And that's living off the land binaries and scripts. And really to define this, it's a project, and I'll live demo it for you in a second. And these are your original, it's not a bug, it's a feature item, right? So to be a LOBAS, these are Windows focused, by the way. They are they have to be Microsoft signed. And what does that mean? That means that Microsoft has to actually sign the code, which is great because your operating system will run it without any problems, even if you put, application allow listing or application controls and things like that, because they're part of the operating system. They're required to run. And then the other option is that they need to be either native to the operating system, so they come with your operating system, or they can be downloaded by Microsoft, such as the Windows Sysinternals project, which I know many of you use, like Sysmon or ProcessMon or PSXEC, right? There's a ton of these. And that was originally created by Mark Rosanovic and then purchased by Microsoft. And he's now, I believe he's CTO for Azure. And really the thing here is that they need to have an extra unexpected functionality, right? That's the feature stuff. And this is great because it does let you get around these application controls. And I apologize, I used the word application whitelisting there, which we have modified. We call it application control, application allow listing. So my bad on that typo. And they also need to have some sort of functionality that would be useful for an adversary or a red team. And currently we have 119 of these documented. So I'm going to show you this in a second. But the first one of the very simple examples here is run DLL32, right? This comes with the Windows operating system. It's required. It's used by Windows to execute DLLs. What are DLLs? Dynamic link libraries. This is shared code pretty much. Like, you don't want to have to rewrite things that maybe Microsoft already wrote for their operating system to function. So instead, you load DLLs. And the way to do that is with run DLL. So shout out to all the folks that found this. Casey Smith, you will find on a number of these low bins. Casey's with Red Canary, and they do some awesome stuff there, like Atomic Red Team and things like that. But others contributors there, shout out to all of you and the work that you've done here. And on the right side, again, these are just screenshots from the actual entry. And you can execute this in a number of ways. For example, you can create a DLL. In the first example up here, you created a DLL called all the things x64, and you just run DLL32.exe. Again, it's a signed binary. It's part of the operating system, and you have to be able to run this. There is no protection at this point because it's just a feature. And then you give it the entry point of your DLL. So we'll do a live demo here in a bit and show you exactly how to do that. I've already created the DLL just in the interest of time, but I'm gonna show you how simple it is to do that. So let's get to a live demo because I know you all like live demos. So lowbass-project.github.io. I'm going to paste it over here in the Discord so you all see it. And here you can see search among 119 binaries by name. Or you can look here. So AT, this is the old school scheduled task scheduler in Windows. You can see the functions is to execute, and it's a binary. We can click on it, and here's where you kind of see what we just saw. You see the path there. You can just execute it with AT. And down here, it tells you exactly how to create. In this case, you're going to create a scheduled task and tell it what you want it to execute, right? So doing this isn't really malicious. It's just part of how the operating system works. And this is kind of where Bryson mentioned the whole detection part. And that's where we have to get good at. We aren't going to be able to stop this, right? Maybe you can stop the scheduled task service, but someone might be able to start it, and then they can create a task. Nowadays, we have a bunch of tasks running, especially if you're on Windows 10. So what can you do to detect this? Well, it's going to depend on what your business does and how they do scheduled tasks. Like if they use that, then you're going to have to monitor and make sure that a new scheduled task might not be created. Or if it is, why? And was it created remotely? Is it running interactively? And I don't know those answers. I can show you how. And right here, we have this detection part where it tells you what you can do. It tells you what event log to look at. But this is where we have to test, because once you find that vulnerability, you're going to exploit it, you're going to execute code, and then what do you do afterwards? Well, scheduled tasks we know is one of the MITRE attack techniques, right? And there's a whole bunch of these, right? We got bash.exe now thanks to Windows. There's bits admin, which is its own technique as well. And you can see over here on the right, there's multitude of different functions and whatnot. And yeah, I forgot to turn off my Discord notifications, so there's someone talking there. But you can see a number of these, and of course, we're going to talk about run DLL. There's a screenshot I showed you, but look at how many ways you can use run DLL. Really a great tool to use. But at the end of the day, this only covers execution, right? We looked at MITRE attack, and the whole thing, like execution is only 10 techniques, right? We could probably fit this under a defense evasion as well. You have the bits job there that I mentioned. That's what bits admin. But again, we're still only focused on a couple of things, right? Like what about persistence, privilege escalation, credential access, discovery, lateral movement, command and control? Like that's really where you want to make sure that you're testing and getting things going. So I'll get to the demo shortly. I want to just do a quick intro here for Scythe. And Bryson, we definitely need to make like a little marketing video of all the different ways of pronouncing our company name, because I've noticed that as we talk to people from different countries, everyone has a different way of pronouncing it, which is great. I mean, it's completely fine. At least you know what the product is and what it does. And it is an awesome product. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the CTO here now, but we did actually use this before I came over and saw it. And really what it is an enterprise grade platform for adversary emulation. So we did the C2 matrix. We have 54 command and control frameworks, right? But only 5 of those are commercial. And be hesitant to running a number of those in production because they're open source. And do you really trust the code you see on the internet? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's your decision to make. But in this case, we are an organization that is giving you an enterprise grade platform, and it runs in production. We really believe in testing this stuff in production, right? So a lot of people are going to say, oh, we should test this in non-production. That's great to train people, but your security controls are in production. So that's where we want to test. And we want to test the post-exploitation stuff. So you might have heard the term assume breach. That is what we believe in, right? Like Bug Bounty and all you folks on here that are awesome at finding these vulnerabilities, you're not going to stop finding vulnerabilities. You're going to find them all the time, right? So let you focus on that. Well, we focus on giving you a platform and a framework to do everything after that initial access. And that's really what we're here and what we want to propose for you. I'm not sure, Bryson, if you had any comments or you like my marketing idea of the video.
I look forward to the Scythe platform reflecting even more George, and we always wear the props. So there you go. So you can actually see what a scythe is, because it's a real word. We didn't make it up.
That is right. It is a real word. So one of the things that when Scythe was created, and really what it is, it's modular, right? It's a framework where you can build on top of. And building on top of that is really where all of you come in and where the community and the call to action comes, right? So as an industry, I think we've covered the fact that you want to evolve from only focusing on vulnerabilities and patching it, right? I'm not saying don't do that. That's extremely important. We will continue to do that. But then what happens next, right? What happens after that? Well, we released Scythe for version 3.1 at Black Hat and DEF CON. Hopefully you caught some of the talks. And we have a number of differentiators here. And I saw one of the CTF walkthrough, lots of Python was covered. So when you deploy, I'm going to show you how to deploy Scythe with Run DLL32, one of the LOBASs. You have a Python in-memory runtime. That means you execute any way that you want, and then in memory, you can bring in this runtime, which means that anything you write in Python can also be executed on the systems you have confirmed, you've compromised. We also have a virtual file system. So it's a red team tool, and half the word is team. So we kind of need teams to work together. So a virtual file system will allow you to share files together. And really, this is good for red teaming and purple team exercises. And then we have the threat automation language. And this is where I mentioned we can emulate and really put things together in an attack chain where you're not just getting access to a system, but then it can run a command, and based on that command can do other actions. So for example, you land on a system, you want to see if you're on a domain. If you are on the domain, then you want to pull all the users on the domain. But if you're not on the domain, why would you try to execute something that pulls all the users in the domain when that doesn't actually exist, right? So our architecture, really, and what we want to focus on is on the left side here. It's a marketplace in the community where we're releasing an SDK. It's released right now. You can download it. I'll cover that in a second. And you can create your own capabilities. So you're doing your bug bounty, you find some vulnerability, they tell you, no, that's actually a feature of the product. You say, okay, since you're not going to pay me, let me create this as a module for post-exploitation. And you can do that through a marketplace that we're launching and launched last week. So you're one of the first hearing it. And then from there, anyone that uses Scythe can create a attack chain, emulating whichever attacker they would like to emulate. They create the campaign, they deploy it, and it runs through automation. And then you do all the other checks, right? You do real-time analysis with the SOC. You can see analytics. It does integrations with Splunk and with Phantom, with really anything that has syslog and things like that. So really where we want to focus on here is on this left side, where you as a marketplace and community can create these this ecosystem. So what we did is we created a marketplace, and that marketplace is a secure ecosystem. So you do have to register in it, and think of it like an app store, like the Google Play Store, right? Anyone can create apps for it. Anyone could purchase an app. Some apps are free, some are not, and there's an SDK. Exactly what happens here. We have all of those. We've created the backend infrastructure, which is this marketplace, and then you, as a developer, you can create these modules. And that allows really for the timing to be a lot quicker, because now customers don't have to wait for the next version of Scythe to come out to be able to test something. They can actually create it or read some new threat intel, emulate it, and create this module. And then you can share it. And it's going to be bug bounty friendly. And we actually have some bounties today that we're going to announce in a little bit. So how do you do this? There's an SDK. And anyone could build modules. You don't need Scythe to build a module. You download the SDK from GitHub. The link is right there. We'll post it here on the Discord. And whether you know Python or you know native code, we have Mac, Linux, and Windows, so you can create code there natively or with Python. and then you use this GUI called Module Buster, which is pretty cool. You create these apps, these modules, and then you can share those. You can share it through the App Store, or you can post the code online. There is absolutely no gatekeeping here. You can do what you want with your code. You can sell it in the App Store and in our marketplace, and you can sell it outside. You can sideload it. You don't have to jailbreak anything for that to work. So here's a snapshot of it. Marketplace.site.io is up and ready. So for example, Chrome Cracker. Chrome Cracker is a module that once you get access to a system, and again, user level privilege, you don't need to be system or root or anything like that. You can actually steal passwords that have been saved with Google Chrome, right? I know none of you do that, but a lot of people save passwords in Chrome, and you can pull those out. It extracts them, it cracks them for you. It extracts the key and shows you the password. You can also do that with cookies. There's Yara Scan, which goes through a system and finds Yara rules. Yara is a method of identifying and detecting various things. And we also have Let Me Out, which is a method to test egress control. So for example, you want to see if this particular organization blocks SSH outbound or FTP outbound, you can test that. And that one, shout out to Mubix, Rob Fuller from Black Hills Information Security. Let us use that code and port it over because it was a Python script. And now you can bring any Python here to the marketplace. So why does this all matter? Well, the whole it's not a vulnerability is a feature, right? I'm sure you've all heard this before. So next time you do hear that, you don't actually have to just say, oh, all this work was for nothing. You can actually create a module and then share the module. I mean, you already did the work, so you can share it for free, or you can sell it. Now, how much is it going to go for? We have no idea. This is like the beginning of bug bounty. When we did not know how much bugs would go for, this is exactly what we're doing again, but for TTPs. And at the end of the day, these TTPs aren't going to be prevented because they're features. So really, we want to put this in the hands of organizations so they can test themselves and then see what they can do if they can detect that in any way. Another reason is community, right? We're building something new. You've already built an amazing community with Bug Crowd, right? It's fantastic where this has gone, right? From the early days when we were pretty much getting bullied online for releasing information about vulnerabilities in systems, but it was because no one was listening to us, right? All the way through to where we are today, where companies are actively asking us to find vulnerabilities on their systems. I think we will be able to do the same in TTPs, right? Where we are evolving from CVEs to TTPs. So, let's should we do a demo, or you want to cover bounties first?
No, let's jump into the demo while you're quick pulling that up. So we talked about setting up community. I think it was really neat and completely coincidental that we were after the previous panel that was talking about diversity, because security's strength comes from diversity, and diversity is more than just race or gender or socioeconomic background. I mean, all of those different factors that makes somebody individually who they are gives them a unique vantage point. And all too often in security, it is our assumptions that kill us. And the more different voice that you can have in that room to look and think about something, the more likely it is that we are going to build a stronger and safer system and ecosystem. And so that's all we're trying to do with the community in the post-access world.
Exactly. So, so yeah, kind of going back to Run DLL and how that is. This is Scythe. If you haven't seen it before, like I said, it's an enterprise C2. We get to create, and multiple people can log into here, and you have campaigns. So creating a campaign is so easy. Like literally, we'll call this LevelUp, and you can create a campaign here. Your communication channels like DNS, Google Sheets, HTTP, HTTPS, SMB for lateral movement, Stego, Twitter, and like literally just click through this and can do things like steal from the clipboard just by like clicking. It's literally Legos. And of course you have MITRE ATT&CK mapping there. You also have MITRE ATT&CK techniques here that you can choose from the actual matrix itself and choose different things. But the point here is none of that. It's here. I've already created a listener. This is HTTP to a domain. This doesn't do anything. This just connects and establishes that connection. And what I did in this case is I created a DLL, right? Because that's a low bit. So to create a DLL, we just download it. It's this simple. You go here, download 64-bit DLL, and there it tells you the entry point. Because if you recall, a DLL, you actually have to tell it where in the DLL to run. So I have another system over here. It's poor Windows 10 victim that's constantly getting hacked. Oh my gosh, what happened? Did it just get updated? Yes, it got updated. So awesome. We will do a live demo, and hopefully Windows Defender doesn't catch anything because it just got updated. So I've already downloaded this file here, HTTPS domain. See, I downloaded it just a little bit before here. So pray to the demo gods, run DLL 32.exe, right? Just a standard command prompt. I'm a standard user. I'm going to tell it to run this, and then I'm going to grab that initial entry point function name. And I mean, we can see this here in the lolbass, right? Like it's exactly how this works. And again, map to MITRE ATT&CK T1085. So we paste that in there. We hit enter, and then it should just go out and communicate. Nothing pops up. Nothing occurs here. But when we go over to our site system here, we see Windows 10.01. We now have an active shell. It has its own process ID 4376. And as I mentioned, this doesn't really do anything. It does give you a shell though. So we can see here what we can do with this particular shell, just like you would any other post-exploitation tool, right? But at this point, we're pretty much just establishing that connection. So we did execution with a lolbass. Windows just got updated, and it did not catch this particular system. So that's always nice to see. But yeah, this is how simple it is, right? So it's assumed breach. We already have access to a particular system. We can execute whatever we want here, and we executed just like it told us. Run DLL 32, and then the name of the DLL and the starting point, and bam, it runs. And we can run it multiple times, right? We can then close this down. If we look over here in Task Manager, for instance, like there is no run DLL 32 there. There's a run DLL 32. This is what we have executed, and you see it's a very small footprint. Very low power usage, and it's there, and it's active here. If we go back, we'll see, yep, there are the two active connections, and we now have a command and control channel established. So this is just one example of execution. Really what we want to focus on is after the fact, right? And what do you do next after you create this? So there's a number of things, and I mentioned you can create a lot of different automation. So for example, I was looking at BotTrap the other day. BotTrap is a Russian threat actor, and they do a lot of collection. So I created this particular threat, and what it does is it keylogs, it takes a screenshot, it steals from the clipboard, right? So every time you copy and paste, it can steal from there. It gets sysinfo, runs who am I, and dumps the keylogger and things like that. And each week we do these things called Threat Thursdays. So we really bring all of this together. The last one I did was Evil Corp. So many of you heard of the Garmin hack, right? If you've used Garmin before, you probably saw that they were down for a week. Everything was down, as you can see on the screenshot here. And what I did is I looked at some threat intel NCC group. I shout out to them. I think someone mentioned that they worked there. So excellent CTI there. So I pretty much reviewed this entire post, and they did not map this to MITRE ATT&CK. So I did the manual mapping, kind of high level what it did, and then we emulated it here, and actually created a navigator layer just for this particular threat actor that you can see here, everything that it did, everything that's in red. And then of course we create the actual threat doing all of these particular techniques. Here's this one in particular, which you can do and emulate ransomware. This was my DEF CON talk this year on how to do that without getting sued or or really bringing down the system, right, and actually doing illegal things. So yeah, we do this every week. Again, just giving back to the community. All of this is done through GitHub, and it's not just about testing, but also about creating these modules that can now do other things. And that's kind of where we were leading up to now for this next part of the presentation.
Yeah, so in terms of helping build community, we already have some bounties out there. We are putting up bounties for communication modules. So if you think about all modules as Legos on how you can be an APT, we have 4 communication modules that we are looking for. And then we already have an offer from Grim that they're going to commit $5,000 into this. And then we actually have another one, which we can't announce now, for even more. And we're expecting more coming. And then keep in mind that these are just the bounties. We also have multiple enterprise customers who are looking in this space for all sorts of different things. So if they see something, they're also going to be jumping on it.
Yeah, and we got an awesome question here from Codingo. Shout out to you. Great question. How do you manage the bounties if more than one person works on an item? Well, again, this is an ecosystem, so there should be competition. Just like, again, we're just putting the infrastructure out there. You're all going to determine what this is, and our enterprise customers are going to determine the price around it. This is our just ballpark figure of what we think that this will cost. So pretty much for these bounties, the ones that come in and work, we will pay on a first come, first serve. But for others, it's going to be an app store. So if you create this particular module, you can sell it on the store, and multiple people can have a module that does exactly the same thing, right? Like if you think of various different apps on the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, right? Like there's multiple apps that do exactly the same thing. It'll just be based on which one people use. There will be a rating system. There will also be a bounty system where someone can go in there and ask for something in particular, and then based on your submission. But for now, pretty much what we've done is a lot of friends and people in the industry from major consulting companies I'm sure you've heard of have kind of just been working with me, telling me, hey, we're working on this and we're working on this. I've kind of just figured out what people are working on and make sure that there's no overlap. But eventually we want to be hands off. And again, this is all community. We are making absolutely nothing out of this. Whatever you sell your module for, I think we charge like 5%, which is just to cover the back-end infrastructure. Like everything is yours. This is not like Apple or anything like that, taking 30% or anything like that. We want to make this open, right? And
we are not Apple.
We will not Apple you. I think that was the one of the best quotes for Unicon last week. So yeah, so this is out there. This is awesome news. You're hearing about it first. We'll obviously go out and let others know, but we figured that you are the target audience for this because you know about all of this and you've already found some cool stuff out there. So the bounties are for communication channels. You can create both communication and capabilities, as Bryson mentioned earlier, and we're looking for these in particular. So Modbus communication channel, as you can imagine, industrial control systems, and Bryson, who is the founder of the industrial control system Village, has co-founder, has various reasons for why that would be a great idea to have. DNS over HTTPS is being enabled by all of your browsers, whether you know it or not. Same with HTTP2 and things that probably you're not looking at, right? And your organizations aren't looking at DNS over HTTP because it's a new protocol. And then the last one's Office 365 as everyone moves here. We've seen a couple of decent proof of concepts, but not anything concrete on that. And as we mentioned, we have Google Sheets for command and control, which was used by Carbonac, one of the Fin groups. I think they're Fin 7. We haven't agreed as the industry if they're the same thing, but now we want Office 365. So those are available here. You heard it first in this debut, in this presentation. It's the first time we do it. So if you're interested, check out the marketplace. And really, how to get started. It's very simple. You download the SDK, which I posted there. It's free. You set up your dev environment. Currently, it's Windows environment. And then you write your module. There's a number of posts out there with examples of it. We just had Unicon, where we had a number of folks talking about the porting of various different things. So like Tim Medine talked about creating a Kerberoasty module, and Tillery talked about VMware detection or VM detection and things like that. So we have a lot of examples. Develop your module. Any questions you have, let us know. We're here to help. We're also on Discord. And once you have that, you submit your module, we review it. You can actually validate your module straight in the SDK. Buster has its own validation, so really hands off, but of course we'll help you through all this. And I think we're building something pretty cool here, and we'd love for you to be a part of it.
So final piece, tradecraft and technique plus tooling is the post-access space. And so we have a choose your own adventure that we created. It's a quick little arcade game that we worked with Tim Malcolmvetter. And here's the link, and it'll go right into it. It's a lot of fun to play. It's really easy. And it starts to get you into the mindset of what it's like to be a red team operator, because now instead of just looking at, hey, I need to be technically clever, now I'm starting to look at the tradecraft of what do I need to do when I'm looking at detection and response on top of protection.
And it's just a lot of fun. If you remember the choose your own adventure games or books, yeah, we miss those. And that's it. I think we're right on time. Did we do this again with like, yeah.
Actually, I think we went way over.
We went way over, did we?
Yeah. No, this wasn't supposed to be a 50-minute talk.
Oh, my bad. Sorry. It's the demo's fault.
Hey, thank you to Casey and the entire Bug Crowd team for having us on. And we appreciate the opportunity because we have been just so impressed with the example that you've set with the kind of community that you've created. We look forward to creating our own complementary community with what you're doing.
Yep. Thank you very much. And to the organizers, it's gone very, very smooth for virtual. Your first, well, technically your 7th virtual conference. You're one of the originals doing virtual cons. So awesome, awesome job. Thank you all. And thank you for all the participants as well. And reach out to us. We're on Twitter. It's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us. Our DMs are open. Anything you need, we're here, and continue on doing awesome things. We appreciate you.